So I think we've already touched on this a little bit with some of the other questions, but how do you balance what's quote-unquote out there, with what grows organically from within? So your insights, your intuition, your nonlinear and creative self versus traditional marketing, industry research, financing, business plans, those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. First of all, I keep in mind right now that perception is changing as the world is accelerating and things are transforming. And so that I and other people who've been watching spiritual growth or working on themselves for a long time may be getting a real foothold in the new perception and the transformed reality where the old methods aren't working anymore for us. But for a lot of other people who are still at a lower frequency, the old methods actually are still kind of working, or they still believe in it. So we have a kind of bifurcated world right now where there are sort of two realities going on. So you can choose right now which reality you'd like to be in. And if you go into the old one, it's going to clamp down on you, and you're going to have to believe in those linear, hierarchical, dominator-victim patterns or whatever they are. And if you go into the new one, you see that you can really create anything you want and that people will support you.
So that it's a far more intuitive process.
Very intuitive, right. And you don't let go of logic because that's for implementation. You still need to maybe do a business plan, but you need to leave it loose because it might want to morph tomorrow into something else. But you get your sense of, here's my vision, and here's what I sense will be an action plan. It's today's logical sequence, and then I'm going to go back out and check the vision again and see if it's changed at all or if other people have come into the mix, and then I'll maybe redo my action plan and see if it really fits for what I still like doing. Because things are constantly changing now.
Right.
And that means we have to rock back and forth between the left and right brain. And the right brain gives us the vision and the feeling state and the imagination, and the left brain is like, let's make it conscious. Let's put words on it. Let's communicate it.
Yeah.
Let's analyze it. Let's, make a plan here. And then don't lock it down, though. Go back to the right brain. Check the vision again. Open up again. Feel the flow again. And then come back to the plan. Has it changed? It's a new way of working. I think that people who are in the kind of new consciousness, that we have to learn to talk about it, to communicate it to the other people who are maybe restless and feeling suppressed and not really liking it, but they don't know why they don't like it. They don't know how to talk about the new thing, and they need bridges so that they can understand it without being afraid. And that's very crucial right now. So that might be part of our work, no matter what we're doing, is to be able to inspire people a little bit.
And show them how to get from here to there.
Yes, that there is a roadmap.
We've figured it out for ourselves.
Exactly. So I think a big job now is removing fear and then helping people understand that, it's like children have imagination, but we get it bred out of us through school.
Right.
And we get programmed into our left brain, and then everything's limited. And we feel separate from the non-physical world. And we have to go back into the right brain in order to reconnect with the non-physical world, where the soul is, and where the true guidance is, and where the collective consciousness is flowing and supporting us. So the new entrepreneurship is going to be those people who know how to blend the worlds and really, really work with the right brain, but not be airy-fairy.
Right, like totally out there.
Yeah.
And, oh, yeah, this is awesome. Actually solidify it and still be actually creating something.
Yes.
I read, for part of my research, there was an article that I read. It talks about designers being the next, design being the new leadership, and designers, calling them DEOs rather than CEOs. And it talked about why, from a design framework, these people were far more suitable with the direction in which we're going.
Yes.
and how they're more flexible to change, how they don't take things personally and they're not so overly aggressive and pushy with things, how they flow and how they allow things to come about organically and from a design perspective. And it's a great article. It really is informing the work.
I'd love to read that, but I agree because I mean, that was my training. I did the interiors and then graphics, and then I went out to California and went to Cal Arts in its formative stage where it was at Disney's Dream School. And they had a program there called Social Design, which was a combination of actual designers and architects and urban planners and psychologists and sociologists, where there was a soft psychological inner part fueling the outer design choices. Mm-hmm. And we would do stuff like redesign the elevator so people will talk to each other inside of it, or, redesign
that's awesome.
the doctor-patient relationship, or redesign the funeral we had. It was like, how do you rethink things in a new way? So now they have a thing called design thinking. Stanford has a program in it. IDEO up in Northern California was instrumental in helping evolve this. And I think it's right that designers are kind of like, well, let's look at the problem. Let's really see what's actually going on here and use innovation, but also practicality, and it's not form over function. It's blended. Right. I think you're absolutely right. And it is a kind of a more fluid way of thinking about bringing idealistic things into form, letting the inner world source the outer.
Yeah, and one of the other things that really was meaningful to me as I read the article was that it talked about these leaders who come from the design background, and so they have more knowledge, more background knowledge, so when they're giving directives, they really know what they're talking about. They've got a certain element of credibility that a lot of other leaders don't have. Mm-hmm. Just because you have experience as a leader, what makes that translate to an industry that you know nothing about, and why was that ever okay?
That's such a good point. Because as people get in their bodies more, which is part of what this is, when they say you're not in your body, it means your point of attention is not in your physical world. It's not in the world. Yeah. So the more you can bring your point of attention inside the body and be real, you're also bringing your soul into the body. And as you unify the mind and the body, you start to discover, lo and behold, the soul has been present in the body all along. It's in the physical world. The spirit is in the physical world. The world of matter is made of energy, consciousness, and light. But if your mind isn't present with it, you can't know that. So
that requires us to be in the present moment as well.
Yes. And to drop down. I always say stop and drop. Come down into your body and bring your consciousness down into here and be in the moment, and then engage with everything around you and feel the light in it and feel the energy in it and see what it wants to do. Don't, overlay your shoulds on it. But see what the energy in the matter itself is wanting to do next. It might want to change, go somewhere else. So this is part of transformation, and it's part of the changed business practices too. Because, to make money in the past, you had to, lock down a process. Look at the oil industry. They can't open to any new forms of energy because they're so invested in an old way of thinking.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you wonder what will happen with those people. Are they just going to have to die out or fail or, I don't know.
They'll move to the new energy models when it really starts to.
When it becomes successful and attractive and something, that they can see can make money, people will move toward it.
Then they'll just go, oh, I guess we have to do this now.
But they're not early adopters.
No, they won't be on the leading edge of things.
Right.
How have you utilized the traditional means, those linear means, to serve the soul approach to business creation? Remaining true to yourself and your vision, but utilizing what's needed in the world for that. Yeah. And how has that been beneficial to your financial success and your overall balance of your daily life and in your business life?
I would say that I realized that it was going to be a gradual process for people becoming educated and aware of what was really going on, and that I couldn't do it all in one big hoopla, that it was going to have to be broken down into stages. And so I started into that really with the books that I was writing, and I worked with traditional publishers that would give credibility to the ideas, that I knew I needed to do that if I self-published it would be too airy-fairy. So I wanted a big publisher, and I wanted credibility that way. And I just kept on going until I got that. Then I realized that the book I wanted to write, everybody kept saying, well, you got 3 books here. We'll go break it down. And I couldn't do everything idealistically that I wanted it in the beginning. So I had to compromise. And then I had to work, they took chapters out. You know, they simplified everything. I said, okay, I don't like it, but okay, that's what has to happen. And so I did make those compromises with the traditional marketplace. But then I realized those people know what they're marketing. They know what's going to sell. So if it's not going to sell, what good would it be creating it if it can't get out to the people? So I did.
Was that the Intuitive Way?
That was the Intuitive Way, yes.
Okay.
And it sold and is still selling internationally all over the world. Then that provided a base for the next books to get published and the next pieces. So I started looking at it as chunks. What's the next chunk that wants to come in that's palatable, that will be marketable, but yet maybe a leading edge kind of thing that'll foster thought or conversation? That's the way I've been working it. I don't try to get ahead of the curve, because what use would that be? You know, you can be right on the leading edge, and then sometimes it takes a couple years before, like my latest book, I think it was a little ahead of the curve. People aren't going to really get it for another year or so. So anyway,
what was your latest book?
The Leap of Perception book.
Oh, I haven't read that one yet.
Yeah.
I read the one before that about the vibratory.
Frequency.
Frequency.
And then I realized after I finished the last book that it really was the 3rd book in a trilogy, and those people who said, go break it down, you have 3 books, were right. But it took how many years for them to actually be timely and fitting with the frequency of the times so that people would be able to understand it. And for me to even get the information in the first place that needed to come through.
The Intuitive Way, that was published
in 97.
God, I got that book when I was in my teens,
Yeah. So sometimes it's a patience and needing to learn that the world has its own timing on certain things. Certain products will be really popular at certain times, and if it's not that time yet, they'll be invisible. It's not a, what would you say, a resignation or anything. It's just a statement of truth, of assessing trends and looking at things honestly, and then saying, okay, this is good.
Right, which is why it's not always best to lead with your mind, but rather let the mind do some of that follow-up. So, you explore those ideas from the creative right brain and, the intuitive stuff that comes up.
Yes.
And then when you have to actually begin to execute it, you use the left brain to do what it's best at doing, which is to organizing information. And
that's right. And then you find out that your thing, you'll be known for that thing, that there's something you do that you didn't realize you did. Like I'm good at translating really large abstract conceptual ideas into ordinary, regular, doable practices. And I tackle big concepts, but I translate them down. And my books are dense. And yet, I don't want to write 3 books on the same subject. I want to write one book and get on to the next thing, And I figure people will get to them and they'll work with them. And so that's just like having your own brand. That would be true for any entrepreneurial thing. But having faith in your own self to, over time, even before you know what your brand is, even. Don't try
to let it grow organically.
Yes, you can't try to label yourself too early. And you wait and see what your own self-expression tends to do. And then the people who are ready for that will be attracted to that.
Did you personally experience at any, once you had started to really work into the process and you had been led to, begin to write the Intuitive Way and to go into teaching, intuitive practice and things like that, was there a point in time that you remember kind of going, oh yeah, so this is what I'm doing now, and feeling really solid about that.
Yes, yes. There was like I don't know exactly when it was, but I had a feeling of hitting stride. Well, yeah, it was like settling in, the feeling like there's a current going in a stream, and you're out of the current and in the eddies, and then suddenly you swim over and you get in the place where the current's really flowing forward, and it starts taking you.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, oh, the current's doing it all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not fighting to do it. That's what I mean by kind of falling into it or hitting stride. Is like an alignment.
It's like when you've gone out to outer space and you hit orbit.
Right. Yeah.
And now you're just orbiting, and so now you get to flow as you figure more things out.
Yeah.
You do. But it sort of gives you the feeling like, okay, I'm supposed to be here. This is it right now.
Right. It makes me laugh because I remember I used to go home at Christmas when I was younger and been in design school and done all this stuff and corporate art director, and my parents would say, well, so, what are you doing? And I said, oh, I'm a graphic designer, but really I'm not a graphic designer. And then every year I would change it and I would be something else, and I never felt right. And then one year I came home and I said, I know what I'm going to be. I'm going to be a spiritual teacher. And my parents looked at me like, oh God. like we don't know you, like, okay, fine. But it was like, when it hit, and I didn't know how to explain it, but it was like, oh, this is what I've been, aligning everything for.
Yeah.
And, and then it was consistent from that point on, and different forms, but the motive was just there, changing. So
to wrap it up, I would say that what ends up happening is that as you start to follow the breadcrumbs and you open up and you raise your vibration and you get into that home frequency, and eventually as you're working toward these things, soul opens up slowly. So, your purpose with time becomes more and more clear, but it's not something that you can just leap into and execute, and this is it, and it's this left brain, very sure thing. It's gentle and flowing.
Yes. And now it may be accelerated now because of the higher frequency on the planet, that once you do it really, really real, for one pure moment, that may usher you into that state that used to take a longer time.
Yeah, because it's so much faster now, especially after 12/12.
Yeah.
Of 2012, right? Because now it's started to, everything's really sped up. I read a thing, an excerpt from one of the 2012 books, and it laid out the years, and now it's like, I can't remember exactly how it went, but now it's like what it used to take 1,000 years, now it's going to take 100 or 20 or something like that.
Yeah.
To where it's sped up at such an escalated rate that things are manifesting much more quickly now.
Yeah, I always think now that everything's being swallowed up into the present moment, so there's actually no future or past because they're all in the moment. They're just memories or thoughts or reality bubbles that are all existing simultaneously, and so you can't project it in a linear way anymore. That means that if you get an imagination, it is possible for it to slide right into form, and almost take no time at all. If you understand that that's possible. But if you're still stuck in the old linear framework or kind of perceptual geometry, then probably for a little while longer, life will obey that belief system.
Because you'll be blocking the energy a little bit.
Eventually, the energy on the planet will block that belief system. It won't let it operate. But right now, we're sort of in between, in a bridge state. So you can still sort of get by on the old ways. Especially because a lot of people still believe in it.
Yes, it's keeping it alive at least right now, a little bit.
But we're in a transition time, a bridge time. So the more people that can step through the doorway and experience the new way that reality's working, then the faster it's going to happen. And maybe that's, part of this new entrepreneurial thing is about, it's not selfishness, but it's fullness or self-centeredness in a different way, where you're centering into the capital S self, the soul self, and saying, I know that myself is good. I'm not egotistical, that myself is connected to all the other selves, and that what I want is what other people want me to want.
Yeah.
And so I'm entitled to it because I'm going to do it, and it's going to be of service to everyone. And then they'll be able to help me because that'll be of service that what their thing is. And so you change your idea about being self-centered.
Well, and you start to realize if Source didn't want this thing to be birthed, then Source would not continually keep putting this into my mind, into these intuitive circumstances, into my view. If I didn't want it that bad, from a centered place, then why would I want it?
That's right.
Would it continue
I wouldn't
to
want
present
it.
itself to me?
I wouldn't even notice it.
Or if I wanted it from an imbalanced space, eventually that would come to light as well, as long as I'm doing my spiritual practice and I'm centered and I'm grounded. Right. You realize when you want something from a grasping, desperation, you go, oh yeah, that's not really me. I don't really want that.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, from an imbalanced place in a certain way, that means uncentered, that eventually it will create a repercussion that topples you.
Yeah.
Right? So that you can refine your grounding and your center again.
Yeah.
It works itself out.
It does. It can take a little longer when we're resisting and when we're, chasing after ego-type stuff. But sometimes that's perfect anyway. So that's the biggest thing is, I think, for me anyway, on my journey toward becoming an entrepreneur is just reminding myself as things come up that it's all right. It's all part of the process. It's all divine. Everyone's an aspect of Source. And this is about taking every single part of my life and using it for my growth, using it for working toward my goals, and understanding that it's not everything, it's not only part of it if I say it's part of it. My job that I'm working right now, my interactions with people that aren't on the same wavelength, everything. It's all part of the journey and the interaction with the divine.
Right. Yeah. It's all resource. I think even the things we've done wrong are very useful.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I really, really, really appreciate, being able to pick your brain for such advanced concepts like these, and I appreciate having made the connection with you, Penny. As you know, I originally got your book when I was in my late teens, and I've returned to it many times, still on my shelf, and just to be able to personally interact with you is such a gift.
Oh, thank you. But, it's good for me too. So I appreciate, sometimes I don't know things until people ask and then it comes out. So thank you for this. Appreciate it.